Deputy Frederick Morgan, what in heaven's name are you doing here on my front porch at 5:30 in the freaking morning? Freddie grinned and his dimples momentarily distracted me. He looked so darn handsome in his police uniform. Well, good morning to you too, Sylvia, he said, making no attempt to disguise his elevator eyes running up and down my t-shirt covered body. I made a half-hearted attempt at modesty, moving to step behind the partially opened front door. I repeat, Deputy Morgan, what in the world are you doing here at this ungodly hour? Freddie's smile evaporated. This isn't a social call, Sylvia. You're going to need to pull on some publicly acceptable clothes and come with me. Come with you? Where? His words had suddenly increased my heart rate, and not in a good way. We need to get down to the docks in Unity right away. Unity? The docks? Oh my gosh, Freddie, is your dad okay? It's not Dad. Freddie cleared his throat. It's Meredith. Meredith? My mother?
That was Jan Bono reading from her new mystery, Crab Bait. Hi, I'm Alan Rose. Welcome to Book Chat. And we're really happy to have Jan come up from the peninsula to join us today and to read at WordFest tonight.
Yeah, the real peninsula.
The real peninsula.
The real peninsula, the one that's on the corner of Columbia and Pacific. It's half a mile wide or mile and a half wide and maybe 28 miles long. It's not the Olympic Peninsula. This is the real peninsula. And thank you so much for having me. It was well worth the drive.
So it's great to have you come back to WordFest tonight and to introduce your third book in this series, following Bottom Feeders and Starfish. So I want to talk about how you go about writing a mystery, but also you have been tremendously prolific and have written in a number of different stories, essays, plays, and so we want to talk about the different writing that you've done and really how this differs in writing a mystery, okay?
Right.
Tell us about Crab Bait.
Well, Crab Bait, as you said, is the third in the mystery series. And it came about because in the beginning, when I said I was going to write a cozy mystery series, I plotted out, well, one paragraph apiece, I plotted out 8 of them. Now I look it over and maybe there's going to be 7, maybe there's going to be 9. You know, it depends how much material I gather on each one of the topics. You know, I started writing the series because after I had 8 books out, which were all short, personal experience, humorous type pieces. And I had these 8 books out and my mother said, are you ever going to write a whole book? Are you ever going to write a whole story for me? And so I thought, it's time. And I started working on it.
Now you participated in a contest for writing a mystery, and that's sort of also got you going.
That gave me a boot in the backside. There was a mystery series that was sponsored by the Coast Weekend, which is the weekly supplement for the Astorian, obviously in Astoria, and they decided to do a year's serial. So they wrote the first one, and then they told you what had to be included in the next month's chapter, but you could take it any direction you wanted. And it was, I didn't do it the first month. I went, well, we'll see. And then the first one came in, and I think somebody won from like Texas. And I went, over my dead body. So I looked at the next things we had to include, and it was the Goonie House. Well, Goonie Day happens to be my birthday, so that I knew a little bit about it. And I started writing the next part, and it had to be to a word count. Well, I had already written a newspaper column for over 10 years and was within 5 of the word count every single time. So I went, I can do that, and put some dialogue in it, and put some drama in it, put some action in it, and I won. So I won, I think it was the 3rd month, and then I won like the 6th month, and then, well, let's just say it was the grand prize winner at the end of the year.
Now, was Sylvia Avery part of that?
No, not a bit. No, Sylvia started actually in 1981. I had gone down to the Sylvia Beach Hotel just outside of Newport, and it's a author's bed and breakfast.
Which room did you stay in?
I didn't. I toured. When they were cleaning the rooms, I went to the Edgar Allan Poe room with the pendulum is swinging over the bed, and the raven is up on the bookcase, and you open the door and there's a mortared-in closet that has a jester's hat sticking out of it. And so I toured all the rooms, and I loved their restaurant. It's called the Table of Contents. And that night I'd seen a play, and I went out afterward to have a little beverage before bedtime. And there were people coming in from the theater. And I love theater people. They're so energetic. And I went over and I sat down, and they said, "Hi, what's your name?" And I said, "Sylvia," based on the Sylvia Beach Hotel. And so that was 1981, I think. And then 15 years later, I was in Jackpot, Nevada, and there was Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show. And it was one of my favorite groups back in the early 70s, and I didn't know they were all still alive. So I got a ticket for the show, and I went and I listened, and their encore piece was Sylvia's mother. Sylvia's mother said, "Sylvia's leaving, she's catching the 5 o'clock train." Well, the chorus is, the operator says 40 cents more for the next 3 minutes. "Please, Mrs. Avery, I just got to talk to her." And I went, "Oh, Sylvia's last name is Avery." And so that's when I started, 1996. The book, first one, Bottom Feeders, did not get written until 2011. And
it certainly shows the sort of the long, unconscious process that writers have in bringing forth characters and stories.
you know, I wrote the first draft of Bottom Feeders in 51 days.
Wow.
It was at least 1,000 words a day. I just sat down and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and I had not made an outline. And since then, I do make the outlines, a long, synopsis with a lot of detail in it and some actual dialogue in it.
That's always the question writers have, is do you outline, do you just go, right with the story and find out what it's about?
The word outline gets a bad rap. You have the beginning and you have the ending and then you have the muddle, the part in the middle. So I sat down and I wrote and I had about 20 pages, single-spaced, and then there's about a chapter, and always look for the hook that's going to pull you into the next chapter when I do it.
Let's talk about cozy mysteries for a moment, because
cozies, yeah.
Realize there's a difference of different types of mysteries.
Well, I discovered that I love reading cozy mysteries. I did not know what they were called. I had written Bottom Feeders before I knew that I was writing cozy mysteries.
Really?
I typed in, I thought, what do you put on the back? The part that says what the genre is. And I typed lighthearted mystery. And what came back was, what is a cozy? And I read it and I went, oh my gosh, I've written a cozy mystery. It was that simple. Then I wrote to the woman who'd written this guest blog, and we became friends, and now she's written 3 and I've written 3. She's in Nashville. I've met her face to face and spent some time with her. But a cozy, according to her and me, a cozy is an amateur sleuth that works in a small town with a police department. She has a quirky cast of friends. There's a lot of humor in it, but there is no graphic violence, there is no obscene language, there is no explicit sex. Now, there are a few of my friends that say, what good is it?
Why, right.
Exactly. Well, you took out all the good parts. But it's a definite genre, and it's a special little, if you want to call it formulaic, it is what is expected. It's not a thriller, it's not suspense, it's not police procedural, it's none of those. It has its own little niche.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who like to read them. I'm one of them. I love series books because when I get to the end of a book, and if it's good, I start reading slower and slower because I don't want it to end. But when it's a series, you've got another one to pick up. Already, the Crabbait came out in June. June. And by August, people were saying, how you doing on 4?
That's great.
And it kind of like, okay, I guess the pressure's on.
Well, we've had on this program Kate Dyer-Seeley, who is now writing 3 different series. She's based in Ashland right now. And Hannah Dennison, who has, I think, 3 series also. And her Honeychurch series is based in England. And so people who love Downton Abbey also have enjoyed the settings that she brings in. Now, this is a first because this is right next door with the Pacific Coast and the Long Beach Peninsula. And Sylvia is a retired person in the Children's Protection Service.
CPS.
So in this book of Crabbait, Sylvia has a very interesting challenge in that her mother, Meredith, may be actually a suspect. Can you tell us, without giving a lot away, what the dynamic is, what's going on here with the Merry Widows?
Well, Meredith makes her first real appearance in the third book. She's mentioned in books 1 and 2. But I started thinking about the people I know and the quirky characters, and what I came up with was, what if, because Meredith has been married 3 times, and they've all died. What if those deaths were not accidents? What if they weren't natural causes? What if she could be suspected of bumping them off prematurely? And then I started thinking about, well, what friends does she have? And I created a geriatric belly dancing troupe. The youngest is 68. The oldest, well, she admits to 85, but I suspect she's closer to 90. I think we're going to find out in book 4. But the 5 of them, they represent the colors of the rainbow. They call themselves the Veiled Rainbow. Meredith is red, and then there's red, orange, yellow, green, blue. They do not have a violet yet. I have a suspicion in book 4 they'll probably end up with a violet. But all of them have had a husband who has died in mysterious circumstances.
And they call themselves the Merry Widows. The
Merry Widows, well, that's kind of what the community has nicknamed them. Merry being M-E-R-R-I, Meredith, and Merry Widows. And they call themselves the Veiled Rainbow. And each of them, with their color, it kind of represents their basic personality. And I started playing with, well, how could they have died? And that became really fun. Yes, the husbands. And how do we know that these were accidents, and what has really happened to them? Because one of them, we don't find the body, and one of them, and it just becomes, what if? And I loved playing with that. And then it got crazy because some of my friends wanted to get involved, because they said, what it's about? And I said, well, we have these geriatric belly dancers, which became, with my circle, the bariatric jelly dancers. So with all the bells and the things, and people started giving me the little, the accoutrements that come along with belly
dancing.
Get
involved in this, your friends?
Oh, they do. And I do have a disclaimer that says that all these people are fiction, and they don't represent anyone that might be an actual living person.
Well, one thing that I think that readers, local readers, will particularly enjoy is that you give wonderful descriptions of the coast, Long Beach, Astoria area, Ilwaco, which I think is called Unity in the book. So there's that enjoyment, but also the quirkiness of the characters. You have quite a group there. Besides the women in the geriatric belly dancing troupe, you've got Jimmy, who's a gay man down there on the coast. You've got Bim and Jerry, who are a lesbian couple who run the Sandy Bottom coffee shop.
You really read carefully.
I enjoyed these characters because, and I enjoyed the fact that the women in their 70s, 80s, they are still vibrant, and they can go chasing after a younger man if they're attracted to him. And I thought, we need to see more pictures of women like this, the vibrant ones who are 50 or more and just living life to a hilt and having a great time of it.
Well, I heard about 4 questions in there.
Okay. What did you hear? Go ahead.
Well, I heard that I call it Unity in this book. But in 1865, Ilwaco was called Unity. I taught Pacific Northwest history for a lot of the years that I taught. And Unity in 1865 was when the Civil War was over and the country was unified. And so it became Unity. And I'm not sure when that passed out of favor exactly, but then it was named for a Native American they called him Jim, but it was like Ilwaco. And it became Ilwaco, so that was where he lived. And I enjoy integrating historical facts in it. I was just leafing through a little while ago and reading about what I wrote with the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, and how they come down into the port and they find a little restaurant, and the things that I've put in about the distances and the animals that they'll see, and this happens and that happens, and even here on the cover, the boat is the Estrella Nueva, which means New Star, which means Nova. And the man who owned the boat, his wife's name is Nova. And it also says in the very, very fine print, Unity, Washington.
So that was put in by Photoshop.
We had Photoshop do that, but the photo itself, except for the 4 little words there, that was taken about 5.5 years ago by a friend of mine who never knew it was going to be the cover book. And at that time, I don't think I'd met him yet. And when I went through Facebook with some pictures looking for crabbers, I loved the cover. So it became an automatic thing.
Good. What I've been impressed by is you have written newspaper articles. You had a column for many years. You have written 37 entries for the Chicken Soup of the Soul. You've written these books. You've written a play.
I've written 11 plays.
11 plays.
9 one-acts and 2 full-length.
Wow. So I guess my question is, how are you so prolific? How do you write so much?
I love stories. I totally love stories. And when I wrote my newspaper column, it started in January of 1992, I had torn my Achilles tendon, and I was stuck at home. And there were things on the news, I said, boy, I could make fun of that. And I started just sending things in, thinking, well, if he needs filler, he can use it. And after about 3 of those, he sent me a contract. Wow. And I wrote 2 columns a month, every other week. I wrote for 10 years, 3 months. I won 11 state awards from the Washington Newspaper Publisher Association. I'm bragging. And with the Chicken Soup stories, what I found was one of the books I'd written was about my teaching career. And every teacher I've ever met says, I'm going to write a book about that kid. Well, I actually did it. It's called Just Joshing. And his name really was Josh. And the subtitle was A Year in the Life of a Not-So-Ordinary 4th Grade Kid. So I wrote those stories, and somebody said, you should send some of these into Chicken Soup. They're looking for teacher tales. And I sent one in, and it got in. And nothing succeeds like success.
Yes.
I was thrilled, and so I started sending more. And then I found out you could submit more than one. They get 1,500 to 2,000 submissions for every book.
Wow.
They choose 101 stories. I have been very fortunate to be in 37 times in the last 9 years. And another brag, I was informed that I am in the top 5 contributors in the entire world. Okay. And I live in Long Beach. You know that send button? It is amazing.
Yes.
You just put them in, and apparently I write the way they want to hear it. And I have sometimes recycled a few of my newspaper columns depending on what their topic is.
Of course.
And so, you know,
yeah.
I don't have to start and reinvent the wheel, but last Sunday I wrote 6 stories for Chicken Soup, 3 for 2 different books.
So let's look at your writing process, because a number of people who watch Book Chat are themselves writing or writers or aspiring writers, and they want to know how do people write? How do they get these out? So with the Chicken Soup stories, how do you fashion those and get those out?
You want me to tell you my secrets?
Please tell us your secrets, right?
My secrets are online.
Oh, right.
On the Chicken Soup website, it says how to write a Chicken Soup story. So I read that, and it said to start with dialogue or start with action. It's a first-person story. There is a moral or a takeaway that comes with it. It needs to be between 350 and 1,200 words. And then they give you the title or the topic of the next book that's coming out, and then some bulleted suggestions of, can you find something that fits this? Because Chicken Soup divides it into little chapters. So if there's a little bulleted thing, I'm going, do I have something for that? Do I have something for that? And I sit and brainstorm with myself. Mostly I'm talking to my cat at the time, and he's watching TV with me, and I'm thinking, oh, there's a story for that, there's a story for that. Because I'm 64. I've had a pretty rich life. It's been a lot of fun so far, and I'm planning on some more. But what happens is you let your mind go into that space. And if it's going to be, you know, the best advice I ever got, which is the book I have the next one in, it's coming out the end of this month. And in the best advice I ever got, it said career, marriage, child raising, you know, the different things that you can get advice on, finances, different things. And I thought, yeah, I got one of those, And I'd write in the topic or maybe the first line or something, and then I sleep on it. Get up in the morning, I'm going like, okay, let's start writing. And I do.
That's great.
Usually I start them with dialogue. I like them to start with dialogue because you can get dialogue and action at the same time. You know, just start it where it starts.
Right.
Jack Hart taught me that, by the way.
Oh, really?
Do you know who he was?
Sure, for
yeah.
Oregonian.
He did. He was.
On this
oh, I adore Jack. He's my guru. Thank you, thank you. He always told me, you know, end a paragraph or a chapter with a 1-syllable, short vowel sound, hard consonant, like shot, dead, you know, those kind of things. And then people go, oh, and they turn the page and they start the next chapter.
Right.
And yeah, he was a mentor of mine.
Yeah. You also write whether it's mysteries or chicken soup or your newspaper column with a lot of humor. And one question that presenters at WordFest have often heard from those attending is, how do you write humor? Also, some of your topics have been about, difficult issues, about health issues and such. How do you get to humor in those dark places?
Did I mention I was 64?
Yes. Does that come naturally? I don't think so.
There have been a lot of dark places. In fact, Crab Bait almost didn't get written. Even though I had a series planned for 8, I did the 2, and then things happened. I had them written, I did not have them published yet. And I had them in a good place, and they could have been published a year before they were. But my fiance was dying of congestive heart failure. And so I became a 24/7 caregiver. Mm-hmm. That was extremely taxing on me. I think I wrote 1 story for Chicken Soup all year. Mm-hmm. And it took about 2 years, and then he passed. Mm-hmm. So after my fiance died, he was my forever fiance. It got me past the HIPAA rules. But if I'd have married him, medical bills.
Yeah.
So my fiance passed away. 10 months later, I thought I was still having anxiety and stress and panic attacks from, the whole process of that. And it turned out that I had a tumor living inside my heart. It was benign, thankfully, and apparently a lot of people have them. It's embryonic tissue that grows as you age, and it was big enough, it was the size of half a walnut. And it was in there banging around in my atrial. And so the fiance died. I had open heart surgery to have that removed. I did not like the way the election came out in 2016, and then my house was broken into. So it was boom, boom, boom. Every time I thought I had my feet under me, it turned out that something was pulled out from under me again. The rug, and I wasn't going to do it. And people stopped me in the street. When's the next one coming out? I said, I'm working on it. That was a lie. I had the file folder about that thick of things I'd torn out of the paper about crab fishing, of things I wanted to include, and occasionally I'd write a scene or something, maybe 2-3 paragraphs, and it was in the file folder, I had not written the synopsis, and I couldn't get back to the keyboard. It was like I lost my mojo. And yet, when I had the open heart surgery, I did write about the tumor inside. I named him Walter. Because if you name a tumor, you take the power out of it. And it becomes funny. And then I was posting my staples and things on Facebook, and my minister called and said I'd turn it into chest book instead of Facebook. And so it started being funny, and I thought, okay, I'm still in here. It's going to be okay. We're going to handle this. And about that time, I realized that if I didn't write about it, it was just going to implode inside of me. And then one day, right after Christmas, this last Christmas, January of 2018, I got a phone call. And I saw who it was on caller ID, but I could have recognized her voice. The woman's name was Marjorie Beard. She had been the all-schools librarian in the Ocean Beach school system for 42 years. So she'd worked with me when I taught elementary and when I taught middle school and when I was teaching high school. And the first thing she said, she didn't tell me who she was. She said, Jan, how long do you think I'm going to live? And I said, hi, Marge. And she says, I'm 91. She says, how long do you think I'm going to live? And I said, is this a trick question? And she said, I've read Bottom Feeders. I've read Starfish. I've read them twice. I might have read them 3 times. Sometimes I forget. But I need to see the 3rd book before I die, so you better get going on it. And you know what? That was the last push. Even though I'd said to people, I'm working on it, even though I'd half-heartedly started making character sketches of the geriatric belly dancing troupe. I had the names. I kind of knew what they drove. I knew what color I wanted them to be, but I hadn't written word 1 on the book. And that was maybe the 1st or 2nd week of January. And the last week in June, I went over and knocked on Marge's door and I said, I have a present for you. And I handed her the book.
Marge sounds like she could have been one of the belly dancers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So with the challenges, there's sort of a subconscious process going on that part of it's planned. You know what you want to write about. You don't tackle it necessarily immediately. You sort of let it percolate.
Oh, yeah.
You're aware of when those challenges are really heavy on us. And there's ways that you can lighten the situation. But it also sounds like you need people like Marge who can sort of give you that push to get you going.
Did you see the dedication in this book? Dedicated to the steadfast and amazing women who encouraged, supported, and gently pushed me, despite many personal challenges and setbacks, to complete this third book. I am forever grateful for your faith in me. I love you too.
Last question. Writers always want to know how those who have successfully written do it. If you were to give advice to a writer who's, maybe she wants to write something for the Chicken Soul, maybe she wants to write about personal experience, and what would you say to her?
Well, a lot of people tell me they're not a writer. I say, well, you don't seem to have much trouble talking. So the write like you talk is always out there. You know, and write what you know. I write where I know, because I know on the peninsula how long it takes to get, from point A to point B and things. And just tell me the stories you want to pass on. I have taught writing personal experience stories, people who want to write their memoirs. And I go, let's break it down into little pieces. Something you can write in one day, something that's maybe 5-6 paragraphs, just something that talks about it. And people will do that, and then they'll show me, and I go, well, what did you say here? And they go, I don't remember, and I go, fake it. Write what you might have said under the circumstances. It's called creative nonfiction. And creative nonfiction is, well, I think Truman Capote first started it back in the 60s, where he kind of made up what probably was said at the time.
Like in Cold Blood.
Exactly. And that's the way that we progress in getting a smaller piece. And, I started writing poetry back in like the 70s. And in the 80s, I started writing little tiny short stories. And then when I got my column, it was 750 words. And then I got into the chicken soup. And then and then when Mom said, are you ever going to write a whole book? I wondered if I could. And if you break it down into little tiny pieces, that's the way to do it. People have asked me if I've ever had writer's block. I don't believe in it. There's no such thing. But as soon as you write the next 3 words, it's broken. You're writing again. Tell something that's funny. Write a piece of dialogue. If your mother says something funny, and I have a friend whose mother is 96 years old, she should write a book about her mom. She writes little things on Facebook, and then she says, I can't write. And I go, well, there it is. So it's all around us. If your kid says something funny, if a situation happens at a grocery store, if something happens when you stop to get gas, when you're walking the boardwalk and somebody stops you and says, is that Japan out there? Oh my goodness, that showed up in book 2. That was like, I gotta get to the car, I gotta write this down. I have my spiral bound notebook with me like 100% of the time. I think I sleep with it. And I'll write down Japan, because it's that little fog bank out there, and I go, yeah, but you can see it better if you like climb up on the side of the wall here and you look over. I want binoculars, and never mind that Japan is off like San Francisco, but people want to believe that.
7,000 miles away.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if you want to believe that, that's great. But it's one of those funny things. And then when the skull showed up in Westport in 2014, they actually found a skull, and I called up the detective that worked on that case, and I talked to him, and he said they had sent it to Quantico, and it was a young female Native American. And I said, foul play? And he said, well, it's 2,300 years old. We're not too sure.
We're still looking for the suspect, though.
And they decided the skull had just been like rolling on the bottom and gone into a crab pot accidentally.
Wow. So is there a 4th volume coming out?
Absolutely. Hook, line, and sinker. Because,
the title of it?
Oh, absolutely. I know the titles of all of them. The next one will be Hook, Line, and Sinker. And guess what those little ladies are going to do now? Those little old ladies have decided they're going to try online dating. They're all widows, and they're all, we haven't talked much about it, rich. So they're going to be a good catch, but what's going to be preying on them from the websites? And it's going to be fun.
Well, Janet, it's been delightful talking to you, and it's going to be delightful to have you at WordFest tonight, so we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
And thank you for coming in from the beach.
You betcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.